Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It is coming up on 5 minutes before 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which means we are 5 minutes before lunchtime in Hawaii. Welcome to my YouTube channel as we continue to follow the progress of Major Hurricane Lane, a very strong Category 4 hurricane, and it remains a very strong Category 4 hurricane. Top winds 155 miles an hour. It is beginning to approach the Hawaiian Islands, and we are going to take a look at everything that is going on. Just want to say right off the top, if you are watching us from the Hawaiian Islands, again, thank you and welcome to my YouTube channel. We've been following Hurricane Lane right through for the last number of days, and now we're waiting to see what the next 2 days will bring. I just want to say, remember, the maps that you see are not to be used for making decisions. We're going to be showing you all sorts of different weather models, and they're going to show all sorts of different paths and outcomes. And you want to make sure that you check the official forecast maps that are out from the National Hurricane Center, from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. So please go there with regards to any questions that you might have with respect to decision making, and also consult your local government officials. Now, we are going to take a look at, we're going to start off with the latest advisory and the latest forecast map from the Hurricane Center. And there's been another adjustment, a slight adjustment in the official forecast to the right of the previous forecast. The nudging to the right has been fairly consistent here in the forecasts that have been coming out. As you know, the forecasters themselves at the Hurricane Center are responding to what's happening reality-wise, and then they've got to do some massaging, and this is going to happen every 6 hours, so it's very important that you keep checking these. Weather is never a static thing. There's always going to be fluidity, and in some cases there could be a large amount of fluidity here. So bear that in mind, especially when we're dealing with something like this with respect to a hurricane. Top winds 155 miles an hour. It is moving west-northwest. It's actually slowed a tad down to about 8 miles an hour. 15.5 north, 155.9 west, and that position, let me just let's just give you some mileage parameters here on where this is all, what the perspectives are with respect to where is it? Did they? Here we go. Sorry about that, folks. Just give me 1 second. The hurricane is located, is 285 miles south of Kona, Hawaii, and 420 miles southeast of Honolulu. We have hurricane warnings up for Hawaii and Maui County, and a hurricane watch for Oahu, and also for the islands further to the west. Please excuse me for my pronunciations here. Kauai County, K-A-U-A-I, and Niihau, N-I-I-H-A-U. I'm not, again, I'm not familiar with the pronunciation, so if I'm doing this wrong, please, please by all means correct me on the chat board that is available. A Category 4 with that 155 mile an hour wind. One of the things that the Hurricane Center did mention in their discussion today was the fact that at least during this afternoon, we had this reach Category 5 status last night, and then as usually happens with these things, you get fluctuations in intensity, eye wall replacement cycles. So the pressure actually rose during the day today for a little while, and then it looked like it was starting to get organized again. I don't have any recent reconnaissance aircraft reports regarding this, but we are going to probably check on those a little bit later on. We'll see what we can find out. Now I put up the water vapor imagery here, the water vapor loop. You can see the well-defined core of this hurricane, the well-defined eye that is actually kind of shrunk a bit during the morning hours, Hawaii time. But I want you to look at this water vapor imagery doesn't go out far enough west, but it goes out far enough that if you look on the western periphery and you see these clouds that are there that are moving pretty much from south-southwest to north-northeast, that is the shear that we've been talking about. And the hurricane is going to be getting into this environment of increasing shear, and the water vapor imagery shows that shows it quite well, because you're looking at moisture at different levels of the atmosphere going up, and it picks that all up. You can see the difference between those clouds on the west side and the clouds that are on the eastern side of the storm, which are basically, they're moving southeast to northwest around the circulation. The clouds to the west are actually kind of moving against where the hurricane is. So it's when it gets underneath that shear that we're going to see some weakening, and that is going to be really important, because it is going to be the driver in terms of how much weakening do we get out of this. And as the storm gets weaker and its path is being dictated by winds that are lower in the atmosphere, closer to the surface, then that is where the models are showing this, making that hook to the right when it becomes a much weaker system. You can see the big island of Hawaii is straight north of where the eye is, and you can also see how the eye kind of, it crossed over the 155 longitude and 15 degrees north, and that eye is starting to gain latitude. It's getting, it's starting to move with a bit more of a northerly component of motion, and it's going to probably take a sharper turn to the right, as the official forecast indicates. The Hurricane Center still has this as a major hurricane tomorrow night at 8 p.m. when it is west of the big island of Hawaii by probably about 100 or so miles, or maybe a little bit less than 100 or so miles, and then weakens it to hurricane status, not major, Category 2 or Category 1, as it continues its track toward the northwest. Notice, by the way, also, this is slow. The latitude, longitude here is 15, 20, so we're talking 300. This is a little over 300 miles from 11 a.m. Wednesday Hawaii time to 8 a.m. Saturday Hawaii time. That is a very, very slow moving system. It's going to be interacting with the mountains of Hawaii, as we've said. By the way, this even though this is not going to be going to Hawaii as a Category 5 hurricane, we feel fairly confident that we're going to see the weakening. We should emphasize here that this is still going to be a very dangerous storm, particularly with respect to the rainfalls in the mountains. Is going to be enhanced by the high terrain of the Hawaiian Islands. So certainly you're going to have some massive amounts of rain in some places, and there will be flooding and mudslides, on top of the fact that there will also be gales to deal with. The storms, gale force winds extend out about 140 miles. So if it comes inside of 100 miles of the Hawaiian Islands, you certainly will be seeing gales out of this. So this is definitely this is going to be a dangerous storm. Even if we saw the peak strength last night at Category 5, it's not going to get there as a 5, but it could still reach, certainly reach the big island of Hawaii if it's offshore. Could still very well be a Category 3. The key is going to be, that weakening. We're waiting for it to start, and it hasn't really quite gotten going yet. Now, the hurricane tracking models late this afternoon, same idea here. They're all getting clustered offshore, although we do have a couple of models that do actually bring it onto various islands here, but the vast majority do that, make that northward turn, and then as the storm weakens, it responds to the lower level trade winds and the low-level center begins to move more toward the west. And that seems to be where the bulk of the models are at with this. I don't see anything that says to me that we can argue against that. And with respect to the GFS ensembles, again, we have this mess basically with the member models kind of all over the place. A large number of them, though, do take it inside that 120 mile or 100 mile zone. That would make things rather problematic for the Hawaiian Islands. And of course, again, just like on the map I showed you before and what you're seeing here, do not use this map to make decisions. See the official forecast, official information from your local government officials, and of course from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. I can't emphasize that enough, folks. I can give you, sort of the meteorological picture of what's going on and what might happen, but you know your area best. If you're watching from Hawaii, I was there 30 years ago, and it was during it was a vacation, and it was wonderful, beautiful, beautiful state, gorgeous islands that you have. So those of you who live there and are watching, you know what happened, how your weather works. If you've been, you've certainly been paying attention over the years. You know how things work in Hawaii, and these hurricanes, extremely rare events, and this one in particular, being that it achieved Category 5 status. This is the strongest hurricane ever observed in this part of the Central Pacific, with respect to being as close as it is to the island of Hawaii. Same problems that we've been talking about as far as the upper air and the meteorology remain the same. It's the the shear with regards to the strength. You've got this upper low that is sitting well to the northeast of Hurricane Lane, and the flow, there is actually a weak ridge in between, and Lane is responding to that ridge, and it wants to turn north, and then eventually, at least from the GFS's standpoint, it actually disappears. It just takes the whole circulation and basically wipes it out. Here's how it looks at the surface, and this is the new GFS, by the way, starting from where we are now, and that's at, I'm just putting where the L is on the GFS at just under, I'll use it at the base, so about 15.2 and about 156.3-ish, and then it turns it, hooks it north. There it is with respect to the Big Island. The GFS actually wants to turn it northeastward as it weakens, and then shoots it out to the west as a remnant low of some kind, or a tropical depression, when we move into the early part of next week. So this is the place, this is the time zone now, overnight, tomorrow night into Friday morning. This is going to be critical in watching the storm pretty much hour by hour. These reconnaissance aircraft flights that are going in are going to be especially valuable. They're valuable to begin with, but they're going to be especially valuable now that we've got the storm inside 300 miles of the Hawaiian Islands and heading in that direction. So we're going to be paying very close attention to the changes in pressure here as the storm approaches the islands during the day on Thursday night into Friday morning. So you probably, if you're watching, you should have all your preparations done, or at least wrapping them up. Weather-wise, over Hawaii at the moment, you look on the tight satellite picture here. We do have some clouds now rolling into the Big Island, but really the core of the hurricane is still far enough south where there shouldn't be any real issues. A good 60 to 70 miles before probably the first lead bands that are offshore. That's where the first lead bands are. So it's going to have to make a little bit more northward progress. Just judging from where the eye is right now, it looks like it's right on 156 degrees west, and it's just about at 15 and a half north. So let's see. We're going to see tonight how sharp a right-hand turn it takes. So this is where we're at with respect to it being a very critical time in the life cycle of this major hurricane. Just been absolutely incredible to watch. Now, let me, at this point, we're going to jump to weather in the U.S. And I think I want to start with the upper air here as we start to see some changes going into the last week of the month of August. And there's our trough, by the way, that is coming through now. We are finally getting into that dry air, low humidity that I've been just counting the days for it to get here. So we're going to be fine and dandy into the weekend, but as models have been indicating, we do have, even though there's a bit of a weak trough that kind of comes through here Saturday into Sunday, this will probably delay the building of the ridge in the east, but the ridge does build, and going into Monday, you start to see the upper high now. You have this rather large upper high centered over Tennessee, and the southern part of the jet stream from Canada is just to the north of New York City. I'm going to go back one model run because we don't have enough of the new run to take us through. But that ridge is going to stay along the East Coast through much of next week. So unless there's some kind of backdoor front that comes down into the Northeast and maybe drops down to about New York City or northern Pennsylvania, it's going to be very warm to hot and humid week next week until that ridge starts to flatten. One of the things that happens in the longer range is eventually the ridge kind of splits away. Part of it goes out into the Atlantic. You get a trough that drops down off the New England coast down to the mid-Atlantic states, and the upper high pushes back westward. Now, models have been kind of going in a couple of different directions with this. On today's run, it still wants to keep some semblance of a ridge in the east here through now we're into September 7th, but there were some prior runs that took that ridge and shoved it back to the west and built the ridge up the west coast and tried to drop more troughing into the east in the longer range period. That's how we've seen this. We've seen this pattern a few times over the summer. When we've seen it, it hasn't really lasted very long. And in the end, the trough in the east exerted its influence. So I'm not necessarily on board with this particular look at this point. So just bear in mind, as always, when we get into the long range, we do see much more volatility with the weather models. This is the European at 240 hours with day 10, but let me just take you there as our trough lifts out. Now here's that little weak shortwave that comes through on Sunday. Slows the warm-up down by about a day. I mean, still we'll get back into the 80s, but it'll keep the 90s away for one extra day. And then on Monday and Tuesday, and it looks like I would say Wednesday and Wednesday of next week and Thursday, and even through Friday into Saturday, we're probably going to still see temperatures in the upper 80s to low 90s with relatively high humidity. The European would suggest that backdoors would not be a problem here. The upper air winds are basically coming from the southwest, from Arizona and California, and the flow goes from there across the Great Lakes and into southeastern Canada. So the ridge is still fairly strong along the east coast to give us one last shot of hot weather as we go through the last days of August and into the beginnings of the Labor Day holiday weekend. Now, with respect to the tropics, we continue to see some signs, and then I'm going to come back to show you some of the specific weather. But as far as the tropics are concerned, it depends on what model run you use. And I know some of you are going to probably, I'm sure some of you are going to say, "Hey Joe, the GFS showed this, or the GFS showed that." We start to see some tropical waves that are going to be moving off. The Hurricane Center actually does mention one that's going to be coming off over the next 5 days on its recent tropical weather outlook. The runs today, you kind of see where occasionally down in the tropical regions, the GFS pops up a closed little low there, surface low, and it kind of comes and goes. But here we are deep into the period where it has something there. Look, it doesn't usually handle these things very well, but I honestly think that looking at the overall scale of the pattern that is developing with respect to the ridge and the Atlantic, the time of year, and now finally the lack of Saharan dust coming off the coast of Africa. One of these things is going to develop. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on things going forward. Now on to the short range. And again, the GFS. Let's go back to the beginning. We've got a cold front coming through here. Now the upper trough is lagging this, so there's probably going to be a little bit of leftover cloudiness overnight into tomorrow morning early. But in the end, it looks like a really nice day. You've got this nice high covering everybody east of the Mississippi, and the low humidity will take us into Saturday. Now Saturday we're going to see the flow become a bit onshore-ish, with the high going out south of Nova Scotia. You've got isobars from New Jersey down to Georgia, so the wind will be coming in from off the ocean. That will nudge the humidity up a bit. Sunday we'll see it come up a bit more, but it's really Monday, I think, that we're going to see the temperatures. Now, if you look here Monday morning, there actually is a cold front that is indicated on the map. If you look at the isobars, there is this. I just want to make this a little bigger for you. But there is a cold front right in here, and there's a high north of Lake Superior. That front is going to only be able to make it so far south before it hits the ridge. And if you look at the surface, it really just kind of gets lost here. It very weakly comes through here Monday night and probably just stalls out and then gradually just dissipates. So I think it'll probably have just minimal impact, but the basic flow here is going to be all next week with that high, that Atlantic ridge building westward. You've got the high off the Carolina coast there. So you're going to have the winds, the surface winds look almost westerly or west-southwesterly. We're going to see temperatures up upper 80s and low 90s. And by the way, if you look in the upper corner, in the upper right corner, that's snow up there that shows up in Labrador. So we're headed there, folks. Before you know it, autumn's going to be here. Late next week, another front, another backdoor high in southeastern Canada, and again, this one, tries to get through, and you get the wind to be a bit onshore-ish. I like that new word. That'll be the only way that you're going to see temperatures. You're going to see an impact to temperatures is if you get any of these backdoor fronts to try and force their way southward. Models sometimes can, depending on the model, some overdo them, some underdo them. The European would suggest that the ridge in the east will be strong enough where they're not going to be any kind of an issue for areas from New York City southward. So we'll just let the models play themselves out. And then now we're going into Labor Day, to the Labor Day weekend, where we do have some kind of a bit more of an important frontal system that's going to come in to the east. But this is so far out now. We're at day 10 and 11 on the long range. So you know what? Let's just we'll just wait to see what happens. So that, there really isn't too much happening tonight as we look at the radar. This is the radar as of 6:20 p.m. Eastern Time. We still have some scattered showers and even a couple of thunder showers in parts of Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and there's some showers and storms in the Delmarva Peninsula into southeastern Virginia. This is the front offshore, the upper trough that's that's swinging across the Great Lakes, the eastern Great Lakes, and western Pennsylvania, western New York. Then out in the west, we do have some showers and storms in the southwest with the monsoon going. Not a whole lot of activity across the Gulf states today with that big high coming down. It's actually creating an environment of drier air is seeping southward fairly deep into the Gulf states. Here we are at this time of day. Usually the Gulf states are kind of littered with scattered showers and thunderstorms, but not the case today as that dry air mass really pushed its way far to the south and looks like it's shut the thunderstorm machine off. We do have some heavy thunderstorms over parts of central and south Florida, and also scattered along the east coast of Florida. That frontal boundary is going to make it down into probably southern Georgia to coastal South Carolina. So likely to see some activity in terms of thunderstorms to the south of there, where you're still in the tropical air over Florida in the coming days. So I think that pretty much sums it up as far as the weather is concerned. We are, you know, front and center with all of this right now is obviously Hurricane Lane, and the overnight observations from the reconnaissance aircraft definitely going to be a big deal and very, very important to forecasters. I mean, the data is always important, but by God, with what's going on, we are going to be watching every piece of data that comes in with this. Michelle Kitko, thank you for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. It's my pleasure. This is a very new experience for me with watching storms in Hawaii, because they don't happen very often. So as I pointed out, it is very hard. Not having a library of events to look back at to see, well, what's happened before, when you've only had a handful of storms that have made direct hits. And the last one was Hurricane Iniki in 1992, which was different from this in that it formed in the Central Pacific, south, as I remember, southwest of the Hawaiian Islands, and then started moving northeastward as a Category 4 hurricane and moved very, accelerated. So the shear and the impact of the circulation over the islands, the impact was far less than it will be with Lane, because of Lane's very slow movement. That's the one I remember, and I remember a number of storms that have come out of the East Pacific that over the years have seen them come very, very close to Hawaii, but then they ultimately fall apart long before they get there. And aloha, by the way, from Kato in Hawaii, from the Big Island. You probably have a lot of clouds going, increasing and thickening up now with the hurricane beginning to make that gaining latitude with that northward component of motion. By the way, collective hello to everybody tonight. I'm not going to break it down individually. Winks Club, man, this looks bad. Hello from Brevard County. You have family in Oahu. Heart is out to all the folks in Hawaii, of course. And again, as I said earlier, while this may not hit Hawaii as a Category 5 or a Category 4, and possibly not even as a Category 3 if it were to weaken fast enough, but it doesn't mean that this is not a dangerous system. So please bear that in mind. If you're staring a Category 5 hurricane down in the face and ready to come at you, that is incredibly imposing, obviously. But this is, at least from the standpoint of what climatology says and from what we're seeing, and with respect to the shear, the upper air winds, the stronger upper air winds, this should weaken somewhat, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is going to produce dangerous conditions across the Hawaiian Islands with wind, flooding rains, and mudslides. And yes, as I said for Winks Club, that's a very, absolutely. If you are in Hawaii, be sure to go to weather.gov, put in your zip code for the specific impact information, and seek more from your local government officials. I've said that from the very beginning, and I've said that, and I'm saying it now. And in fact, if for those of you watching, we can actually do that for you right now. I'll show you how that works. Most of you, or if you're on YouTube and watching, you probably know how the internet works, but you'd be surprised how some folks only have a cursory knowledge of it. So I put in weather.gov, and you can see it here, okay? And if you look in this corner here, you can do it two ways. If you put your zip code in the box, I don't have a Hawaii. Let me see if I can get a Hawaii zip code. Okay, so let's get a zip code for Hilo, for example. So it's 96721. Okay, so if you go in here and you put 96721 and get your weather. There's Hilo, Hawaii. You'll be able to bring up your local conditions, and actually if you go to the state of Hawaii on the map, that will bring you, if you click here, okay, so you're going to bring up the National Weather Service in Honolulu, and then you can just look on the warnings map here where everything's in red, so you've got hurricane warnings all over the place. The purple's the hurricane watch. So if we click on Hilo, for example, you're going to get the forecast page for Hilo. You will have the worded forecast, and actually from here, from the home page, if you look across the top, there are all sorts of forecast maps that are available, and there was some tropical hazards. This was rather useful because they do have graphics where you can actually pull up specifics here. For example, I just clicked on the Big Island, and it tells you local details for Big Island interior. It lists out all the potential hurricane warnings remaining in effect, impacts, potential threats, potential impacts, flooding, rain, all the rest of it. So, all these letting you know, for example, significant impacts, some damage to roofing, siding, along with damage to porches, awnings, carports. You get the idea, folks. So weather.gov, your go-to page, your local government officials, always front and center here, okay? As I said earlier, I can kind of give you a little bit of perspective and commentary on what's happening, but with regards to how you deal with this, that's where you have to go. So I hope that all of you are taking advantage of that. And I have to tell you, by the way, because we do have and have done this a number of times, where we've been focusing on occasionally on the weather in Europe, and we do have folks that watch from England and Ireland and from Western Europe. And one of the things that they've said, and I think this is very important, their government websites are nothing like what we have. Our National Weather Service is amazing. They do a terrific job with their websites, with weather.gov and the NOAA sites, the satellites, the radars. So much is out there and available for you to look at, where you don't have that available for those that watch from Europe and from Ireland, from England, and so on. And they always tell me that they can't. It's very hard to find weather information there. So you've got it at your fingertips, folks. So be sure to take advantage of that. Israel, any threat of the hurricane or of a hurricane or tropical system coming close to the Mid-Atlantic in the next 10 to 14 days? Until we see something form, the answer to that is no. Right now things are just so quiet. I mean, to speculate on what a model does on a particular run where it prints out an L, but I would have to argue against it. So I would just wait to see if models start popping some systems up. I think something will develop somewhere in the next 2 weeks, and it might be more than one system that does, but for now, the answer to that question would be no. No problem, Winx Club. You're not blowing up the chat at all. I understand that. You're a Floridian, so you get this. And you moderate for Mark Sudduth's, I hope I said that right, hurricane track. When he's live, he's deployed with the Weather Channel to Oahu this morning. I totally get it. Please, I appreciate actually that you do this, that you're doing this, because it's hard for me to talk and do all the technical stuff that I got to do to switch maps back and forth, and then chat by writing on the chat board at the same time. So you are doing me a huge favor, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And Brian Bustillos, what about Texas? Are you going to get hit this year? There's nothing in the models at the moment that suggests that there's any tropical system anywhere. But again, I would just caution that as we get into the longer range, something's going to pop up someplace. I just don't know when and where that's going to be. But we are in an unusually quiet pattern here on the Atlantic. Now, remember I've said a number of times before, when the Atlantic's quiet, well, usually the Pacific is busy, and the Pacific has been busy. Well, except for Lane now, there are no other new systems that look to fire up. So if the Pacific is going quiet, this may be the time where the Atlantic does begin to wake up. Timothy Veltman, you missed the start. You're going to listen and grab a quick shower at the same time. That's great. Love it. At least on the GFS and the Euro isobars west to east and not southwest to northeast. Well, that means for hotter temperatures, and it'll probably take temperatures up above 90 in inland spots. Although this time of year, the sea breeze really doesn't work to cool things down, and all it really does is just make things a bit more humid. But one of the things that we probably won't see too much of next week, if the way the high is, we probably won't see a whole lot of shower and thunderstorm activity. There might be some scattered stuff that starts popping up maybe on Monday or Tuesday, but it's going to be widely scattered. It's not going to be like we just had with, like we've been having over the last 5 weeks or so with these troughs in the east getting locked away. That we're not going to see. So that is a good thing. Any ideas from Sean Johnson? Wants to go now to the El Nino winter of 2018-19. Does this mean big storms for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast? Sean, good question. Just do me a favor. Save it for another month or so down the road when we have a bit more perspective regarding regarding if this El Nino is really going to develop and where it's going to be based. There's just too much variability right now, and it's too early in the game to speculate. And if you're new, because I think you might be new on this channel, certainly I don't remember seeing you on the chat board, so welcome to you. I would just tell you that with respect to the long range, it's not really my thing. I've said this many times. It's hard for me to get my head around all this stuff. And there's a lot of folks out there that do long range very well. I'm not one of them, so I really kind of shy away from it. That doesn't stop me from talking about it, but let's just wait another month or so, and we get into October, and then it becomes a bit more relevant. 99 Wolves. You haven't been here in a while. Good to see you on board. I'm assuming you must have commented. Oh, there you go. Haven't been on as of late. Good to see you. Always welcome, and appreciate you being here. All right, so it's coming up on 6:33 Eastern time, so it's 12:33 Hawaii time. What I'm going to do is, and I'm not going to guarantee this, I did do a live stream last night at roughly midnight Eastern time, 6 p.m. Hawaii time. So there was a fresh video up during the evening hours for those of you watching from Hawaii. It'll depend on how tired I am, because I actually had a broken night of sleep last night, where I woke up after 2 hours and was basically wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning until I fell back asleep at 5 and then woke up at 7. So I'm kind of been yawning all afternoon and evening. So I don't know how much strength I'm going to have to do a live video at 11:30 tonight. I was not able to upload the Joe and Joe Weather Show because for some reason there were some technical problems with Facebook, and it wasn't letting me download the show after we finished. I tried it several hours later, and it still wasn't letting me download it. So maybe, hopefully tonight, it will be. So my colleague Joe Rayo, and I will be doing our Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook at roughly 9:15 Eastern time. And that's on Facebook page Meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or on Joe Rayo's Facebook page Joe Rayo Weather. If you're not on Facebook, hopefully that technical glitch has been resolved, and I will be able to upload that video and put it up tonight if I'm feeling too tired to cut a fresh one, or if there isn't any material change in what's going on with Hurricane Lane. So we'll leave it at that. In the meantime, just a reminder, I'm a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, along with the Ebates Associates Program, and these are programs that are designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon and their affiliated websites, or Ebates and all their affiliated retailers. So if you use those links to shop, it's great. You get your stuff, doesn't cost you an extra dime, and they throw me back a little bit of coin so I could get some coffee or a cold drink when the hot weather returns, and maybe a cigar to relax with when I try and do a little bit of fishing. Although I'm not going to be able to do much fishing this weekend, but I might be able to give it a try. Maybe I'll give it a try on Friday morning with a little bit of luck. Ruru25, nice to see you on board. Take my vitamin C and a melatonin tablet, and I'll get some rest. Absolutely, thank you. Greenfire919, did Joe Rayo have a good vacation? He had a good vacation, but he went up to Vermont. And it rained much of the time while he was up there. He said there was only one day where it didn't have any rain to deal with. And thank you very much, Scott Briller, for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. All right, folks, so we're going to leave it at that. Have a great evening. And again, Joe and Joe Show at 9:15 on Facebook. And hopefully, if I'm still awake, I'll sneak in another live stream tonight at 11:30 when I'll have all the new information, the new advisories from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center.